Hey guys, it's Matthew here once again, and today I just want to make kind of a quick video about how to level cast on crit characters, as it's quite a common question I get asked, and for a lot of people it's not going to be anything new, so you don't really have to watch it, but it is going to be quite helpful for some others that don't know where to start when they're making a cast on crit character. So first and foremost, I typically start, I think the best start for a cast on crit character is a shadow, just for early game. If you want end game potential, Ranger for this type of build, for my cast on crit ST, is going to be a bit better just because you can grab 8 attack speed, and that's a pretty nice node to start with as well. And then you can optionally grab elemental damage as you want. But as the Shadow, you start off with some pretty good damage nodes and some pretty good utility nodes like Blood Siphon and Coordination, fills out some dexterity. But more importantly, you are right next to all of the build's crit. So for the dagger nodes, you have all of this crit here and all of this crit here, and then you have all of that crit there. And then you start moving down this way and you grab all of this crit too. So you are filling out almost all of the build's crit in the first 30 to 40 levels, which is just in time for cast on crit at level 38. So that's why I started Shadow on this character, because I wanted it to ramp up really quickly and really easily. So you just start off grabbing there, going down here, go along this way, grab all this, go up here, grab this. That's about the time you swap into some Ungles and get some serious crit on your daggers. Go along this way, grab this, start going down there. I'd probably grab these by that point. Grab Acro, grab this, and then the rest fills itself out as needed. So to actually level, dual Ungles are highly recommended. Let's just say that to level a cast on crit build, I would never recommend it as a first character. It's always nice to have some established currency just to buy some of the nicer low-level items and specific gear that you need just to make it really smooth. For example, the dual Ungles. These will give you a lot of crit, early on especially. By the time I'm level 30 or 40 wearing these, I have like 50 crit already. And that is a very large amount of crit at that level, which lets you actually start leveling cast on crit. But initially, you just grab some twink items at level 1, like, a last resort, something like that. I grab Spectral Throw, and you put on some Elrond jewelry, so that's minus mana cost stuff, so that your skills are free, and whatever else you can. Gloves like these will carry you all the way through, like 30, 40, 50, 60, as long as you want them to, because they have huge attack speed and a little bit of lightning damage to start things off with. So grab ST with some of that twink gear. ST works out just fine. Get LMP into the mix once you're level 8, I think it is, and then you can start actually doing some good damage. A Meganauds is really good, and so is a Ignomonomon, whatever the fuck that thing's called. That gives you the bulk of your damage for Spectral Throw, and you can actually go through and level fairly quickly. A Val Double Strike is pretty good for single target if you can get a hold of one of those. But most importantly, you want some Elrond jewelry and these gloves, I would say. By the time you hit level 16 in Act 2, you just finish off the Chamber of Sins quest. At that point, I would recommend grabbing 3 Heralds, and that's the basis of your damage for the next 20 or so levels. You grab your Herald of Ice, Herald of Ash, and Herald of Thunder, run all 3, use your Ungles, and that will carry you through until roughly cast on crit time, which is at 38. Now for me that seemed to be okay, not too many problems. By the time you hit 38, you start to lose a bit of your damage in the last few levels of that setup, but you should be able to get through it. At that point, cast on crit, level 38, that's when you can start using it. If you have dual Ungles and if you have decent enough crit, then I also recommend putting on a Vol's Protector if you have one. At least a 4-link, a 5-link is much, much better, because at that point you can put on cast on crit, Spectral Throw, LMP, there's your basis for the cast on crit, and then you can squeeze 2 spells into it, which for me, I think, leveling would be Arctic Breath and Arc. Now the reason for a Vol's Protector is because it gives you an extra at least 3 power charges by that stage, 4 if you've taken the passive, and that's another 200% crit right there, all the time, because you're going to be critting, it's going to be kept up. Otherwise, a curse on hit with Assassin's Mark setup works, but it just won't be quite as effective as instant power charges on crit here. So, alternatively, grab a tabular, put in your other 3 setup, and then you can run 3 spells. So at that point, your damage should be pretty good, even with 2 Ungles, and it's pretty much smooth sailing from there. Upgrade your gear as you go. Still remain with some Elrion jewelry. As I said, for the build, you need about minus 15, minus 18, so 2 rings, and that will make this base setup free for the entire duration. You can put on whatever auras you want, run whatever flasks you want. I typically run a few Quicksilvers, just for the leveling process. And yeah, it's like really straightforward at that point. Your damage should feel pretty good, considering you're running 2 or 3 spells against more or less just low-level monsters. One other thing you can run is an Ungol's Gouch. As soon as you get into the cast on crit. I don't know if I actually have one. I don't remember running one myself, but you definitely can, because it's a pretty good crit. And the crit multi doesn't actually matter at this level at all. Well, that was a fail. Yeah, so it gives you 100% crit and minus 50 crit multi, and since you're not really doing much crit on your spells anyway, it's just good to fill out for a fairly large amount of extra crit without losing too much damage. And on top of that, once you're ready, it's a pretty good idea to grab a Vagan Dagger over one of these. If you have one available, and if it's gonna be better than Ungles. If it's much slower, it probably won't really pay too many dividends at that stage. Likewise, if you're going cast on crit for wands, I would recommend Shadow or Witch, whatever the build requires, but one of these two will be closest to all the wand nodes, so when you just start leveling, make straight a beeline for the wand nodes and the shadow nodes and grab a Twizzle. And by that point, you can have some really good crit once again, so it doesn't actually feel bad leveling cast on crit because you do get a fair amount of procs. Alternatively, if you don't want to level cast on crit, you can still, for this setup right here, for the dagger setup, you can still take all the same passives and just level as crit, elemental, something. So static strike, reeve, spectral throw, it's all good, and it'll all work up until about level 50, 60, when you actually want to really swap into cast on crit and you have the gear ready for it. For that, the main setup would just be 2 heralds, so Herald of Thunder, Herald of Ice, and Wrath, and that fills out pretty much most of your damage as you level up. Just keep leveling those gems and you keep getting more damage. So I hope I haven't really missed too much. It's pretty straightforward as far as I'm concerned. Just make your skills free, try and ramp up as much crit as possible. This is much more of a softcore leveling method, and it works perfectly fine. Not sure I would recommend it hardcore because you skip most of the life for the build in the first 50 levels or so. You only grab something like this, and even that doesn't keep you going for too long. Yeah, so get out there, level some cast and crit characters. It's actually really fun if you have the right stuff as soon as you pick it up from level 38 onwards. And the right stuff for me was 2 Ungles, a Vol's Protector, in a 5 link at least, and yeah, it just kicked ass, and it was a lot of fun leveling the character. So I hope this video helps some people, and yeah, as always, I'm Mathil, thanks for watching.